Good afternoon and welcome to UMedTV. My name is Kemal Erkan. Today is October 27, 2023. It's another political series episode that we are going to have. Our Congress, State Representative Sherry Walker Dorsey is going to join us. She's a passionate advocate of positive change in Delaware. She's a public servant. Dedicated her life for Delawareans, and she is running for another important position. And we are going to get to know her more, and I'm gonna, without further ado, I'm gonna bring her on and we can actually start our conversation. And Representative Sherry is with us.
Hello, greetings.
Sherry, how are you doing?
I'm well. How about yourself? And thanks for having me.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us. We were hoping that we would have this event with you, as we have several different political guests in our show. Just to give you a background, how we started back in 2020 with the public pandemic that we were going through. We wanted to have direct access to our patients. As you know, United Medical is one of the 4 accountable care organizations in the state of Delaware. And this access for patients, we added more to it. So because we wanted to make sure that we were able to connect with our employees who work from home that time, and also clients who didn't have direct access to us, so they would be able to see us and get information directly from us. Other than this one, we also have another event called Bariatric Friday. Dr. Isaiah Irgao, he joins on a weekly basis, and we actually go through the topics around morbid obesity and bariatric surgery issues, and that's been happening in the last 3 years. So because what we do, providing healthcare for our people in Delaware, is extremely important, and it's also a very much the way that we have to kind of follow everything, the regulations. Like, I would say that it's one of the most regulated fields industry in the world, and in the United States it's even more. So then it makes more sense for us to get together with our policymakers like yourself to be the voice for our physicians and our providers in our network. So that's our goal for today. And because you are running for another really important office, we wanted to get to know you more. And it's interesting in a way that you and we didn't actually spend any time before this event. Maybe we were in some events together, but we never spent any time. We never talked. I don't know you much, and I want other people to be able to get to know you and see what happens in the future for the elections 2024. So if you can tell us about yourself. Again, this is all about you today. It's not about us. So we want to get to know you.
Well, Chairman Kemal, thank you so much for having me on today. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to be in your presence. And by the end of this conversation, it is my hope that we shall know each other much better. I am Representative Sherry Dorsey Walker. I represent the 3rd District in the State House. I am in my 3rd term as a state representative. I previously served on the Wilmington City Council in the 6th District. And as you mentioned, I am seeking elevation to become Lieutenant Governor. In addition, I served on the Board of Parole. And I believe that these opportunities and the various positions that I have held have uniquely qualified me to be Lieutenant Governor. The Lieutenant Governor has 2 main roles: to preside over the Senate and to chair the Board of Pardons. And as I previously mentioned, having served on the Board of Parole, we would make the recommendations to the Board of Pardons. So I'm looking forward to being in the position where I can actually receive the recommendations and send those recommendations up to the governor. So I'm excited about the elevation.
So from the personal side, if you don't mind just telling a little bit more about your personal dedication for Delaware, I guess.
Certainly. I'm born, raised native Delawarean. I'm originally from Wilmington, Delaware. Delaware it dwells within me. I'm one of those individuals that tells people once you drink the water, it's a wrap. You're here to stay. I absolutely love my state. I went to St. Elizabeth's School for all 12 years, which is right in the 3rd District. I attended the University of Delaware, studied English and journalism, and I went to Howard University and obtained a master's in film production. So I'm actually a filmmaker by trade. I have a company called SWAP Productions, LLC, and SWAP is an acronym for Sisters with a Purpose. I named my company after the nuns who educated me at St. Elizabeth's School. I am married to my college sweetheart, Dwight, and he understands every bit of me. We've been married for 19 years. I knew I was going to marry him, Kemal, when I was in the throes of taking exams and writing papers, and my dorm room was not the cleanest. And I came back from taking an exam and handing in one of my papers, and my dorm room was immaculate and dinner was ready. And I called home and said, I think I found my husband.
So that's a good support there, right? So that's right.
Yes, he's been as supportive since that day.
Excellent. So lieutenant governor position is an extremely important position. The presiding officer for the Senate, succession to the governor if something happens to the governor, chairing the board of pardons and advocate and public advocacy and public engagements, and there are so many other important roles that you have. But it's also very involved in a way that, and I'm not making any comparison in any way, but when you are in that position, pretty much it's almost like running a corporation company. Like you are in charge. So if something happens, first call goes to either to you or to the governor, depending on who's answering for first, I guess. So, and it's you're in charge of everything from economy to the healthcare to the social issues. And in my opinion, someone who is in the seat that you are in as a representative today, and your third term, completion of your third term, so it's an important experience for us to see someone like you running for this position. Now, the first you have to overcome the primary elections, and there is another nice candidate running for Kyle Evans. And she was with us a couple of weeks ago, and we are independent from every point and trying to. And I haven't met her before, and I haven't met you before, so you guys are both same distance to me until we get to know you guys, right? But again, competing with your own party, another Democrat, it brings a lot of responsibilities as well. So how do you plan to overcome and still win this election?
Very good question. Well, you are correct. She is a very nice person. We're actually friends, and we're going to be friends when the election comes to an end on September 10th, 2024. We'll still be friends September 11th, 2024. I don't believe in negative campaigning, and there are actually 4 people in this race right now, 4 Democrats. What we do, and this is how I've always campaigned, is I stay on the issues. We may disagree on the issues, but we don't have to be disagreeable. We don't have to be disrespectful. And I believe that we can set the tone for how elections should be run with this lieutenant governor's race.
Mm-hmm. So starting with the day one you are elected and now you are in charge in the office, normally I have my questions in different order, but I do want to bring up, just because what happened in Maine, and then this is, one of those habits that we have. So something bad happens, we talk about it for a couple of days and then we forget. So 2 nights ago when I heard the news, and unfortunately the society we live in, and for someone who was born and raised in Turkey, for 24 years, I was 24 when I got here. never left since then. I'm a Delawarean by choice. And the thing was, as soon as I see the news, unfortunately, and I'm just being honest with you, my first reaction was, I'm hoping that it's not some Middle Eastern name. Mm. 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 Just because what's also happening with Israel and the other stuff, and I was, how these things are, the social stigma of every kind of sensitive topic makes people more maybe self-conscious with those things. And then I kind of got upset with myself. I'm like, there are people who lost their lives and people who are injured. And what I'm thinking first thing is, I hope it's not some Middle Eastern guy. Now, Turkey, depending on the day that people have, so we can be on the Europe side or we can be on the Middle East side. So depending on how it is. So that I kind of like really, I don't like the way that I thought, but then I overcome that issue. Now, this problem that we had brings the gun control problem right away, right? So that discussion of gun control, is it related to gun control? If we had better gun control, would this not happen? So in fact, like when we go through, our topics, and not every time we have guests in this show, so then I have to cover this with my another fellow in our business development, Sean. So we prepare and then see, we just discuss those topics between each other. So, but then all of a sudden gun control came up again, because last time we discussed this was maybe the last time when this similar thing happened.
Right.
So what do you think is the solution for these types of issues that we have, and what's the best approach would be for gun control?
That's an outstanding question. Well, first, I'd like to address the first part of what you mentioned, that you were praying that the person wasn't of Middle Eastern descent. It is natural to feel that way when a situation or circumstance arises and you are a person of color or someone who's different. You pray that the individual does not look like you. And that's just how we think, because we know that when one person does something who looks like us, then all of us have done it. And that's just being honest and realistic and having these open, honest conversations so people understand how we feel, that this is how we have to process. Mm-hmm. So upon finding out that he wasn't a Black mm-hmm. person or a person of Middle Eastern descent or a person of color, did it make us feel any better? No, because lives were lost. At the end of the day, what needs to happen is legislators have to make the tough decisions about red flag laws. And Maine does not have any red flag laws. We do have them in Delaware. We have red flag laws. We've done a lot around gun control. And one of the biggest things that we've done is ensure that people who are mentally ill cannot gain access to firearms. We don't want to take away anyone's right to firearms. We know that the Second Amendment exists for a reason. We know that people like to hunt. And in Maine, people do like to hunt. That's part of the culture. And in many other states, even in Delaware. However, we want there to be responsible gun ownership. And that does not say that we don't want you owning a gun, a responsible gun owner. A responsible gun owner is not going to go to a bowling alley and shoot the bowling alley up and hurt people and kill people, and then leave there and go to a restaurant where people are enjoying a night out and then they don't come home. That should never be, yet it happens too often. And that has actually hit home. There was a person who was a victim of a mass shooting in Ohio, and she's my cousin's goddaughter. So she spent Christmases with us, and she will never spend another Christmas with us because someone lost their mind in Dayton, Ohio, and decided to just shoot the block while she and one of her best friends were dining and celebrating their promotions. This cannot continue to happen, yet it does. In Georgia, another state that doesn't have red flag laws, that just voted that veterans regardless of if they have mental illness, can gain access to firearms. I wholeheartedly support veterans. My father is a veteran. My uncles are veterans. I have family members who are veterans. But if you are mentally ill, regardless of your status, you should not have access to a firearm, because at some point you are going to do something that should not happen and cost others their lives. Now look at the manpower being used to try to find this individual who killed dozens of people. It's a sad dynamic for a country. Our children should be able to go to school and go to school in peace and not be concerned with someone having to come into their school and hurting them or their teachers. And teachers are heroes. Let's talk about that too. Look at how many teachers have stepped in the line of fire to protect our babies. But you have to have legislators who have the courage to stand strong in the midst of adversity. And then we also, I don't want to belabor this, but what does your faith look like? Our country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and we've gotten so far away from our foundation. And we have to get back to praying. My mother was an educator, and we talk about it all the time. And she said, when they took prayer out of school, that's when the devil was allowed to come and roam the classrooms and roam the hallways. And now look at what is happening in our country. So we have to get back to a place where we cover our children, we protect them through prayer. And this is not about one religion being better than the other. This is however you pray. Let's make sure that we're taking care of our communities.
So, Sherry, with the red flag law, my understanding is it is allowing states to take the gun or any type of weapon they may have, firearms, temporarily while they're going through that process. If you can help me out, elaborate this a little bit. So how would this work? Like, for example, we are a healthcare provider. One of my daily discipline I have with my office, we have 2 case conferences we do every day. And both of them are mainly with our nurses. So in the first one, they present our ACO, Accountable Care Organization patients. These patients, in this case conference, we have 4 nurses. There are 2 different teams, 4 nurses, 1 social worker in each team, a pharmacist, business development resource, and I'm leading one of them, and my clinical integration director, Donna Gunkel, she's leading one. Now, the reason I'm giving you this background on this, we see patients who are struggling through depression, through other things, but I don't believe there's any question or any time we discuss whether or not this person potentially may own a gun if they are going through that. And maybe something is missing in our flow, but I want to kind of understand what the expectation is from this law. Like, what's the healthcare provider's role in that, in order to make this more efficient, I guess, right?
It's a great question. And maybe that needs to be something that we address. The role of the healthcare provider with red flag laws. Of course, HIPAA exists. So it's not something where you can tell us that someone is mentally ill. However, when an individual has been institutionalized at one of our places where they can go, Rockford or the state hospital, and they come home, this is where the healthcare community can be very helpful. If the individual tries to apply for it or applies to get a license to purchase a firearm, maybe this is where the healthcare community can say and work with the state and say, this person was in our system, in our mental health care system, and this individual should not be able to purchase a firearm. Now, again, I mentioned HIPAA, so we'd have to be very careful about how we do this, but I think that's worth exploring and having some robust conversations about how we can ensure that we're working cohesively.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That would be very important. I think maybe we'll perhaps we can have a follow-up conversation. We have a meeting with Brian Townsend coming up in December, and you are welcome to join us for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's not gonna be, like that's not a YouTube event, so it's just an in-person meeting. But I think I can see potential benefits for us to be more alert, and because one of the things that I see, and very commonly I see these days, when our nurses presenting the cases, they don't present every patient. They present patients who are high risk, who have multiple chronic illnesses, who have behavioral health issues, and that's the role of social workers in our system, which they help us to facilitate certain benefits that they may have. So I think the issue that I'm seeing is that someone who's on 3-4 different psych medications, they're not necessarily they're not in the mental institution, they're not admitted, but they are in the outpatient setting, they're being treated. And I don't think in any, I've been doing this for so many years now, none of we have to talk about the issue of gun control. So perhaps we have to be more alert and really need to educate our people and also work with the state to see if we can be part of the process that you guys are going through, and then maybe we are able to help in those.
Integrating our systems and working together.
It is devastating.
The social work aspect. Social work aspect.
It's just also last week, first time in a long time, I went to one of the sports events. And this was right after the Israel-Palestine issue. And, I have to, again, this is kind of like a therapy session more than your candidacy. But I'm like, what if something happens? There were 3 different games in that at that night, and more than 100,000 people in one place. And I was worried. Honestly, those things always come to your mind. And I think everyone should probably every individual should do their due diligences with what's happening around them, and especially with this mental health issue. One other thing that I'm going to tell you, and then we can move on from this one. I was never a victim of any kind of prejudice or racism in my life. In Turkey, we probably have maybe internally in different ways, but I never felt that.
Okay.
This all started maybe in the last, after September 11, obviously. You are more concerned or more conscious about your name, if someone, their reaction. And I apologize if, I hope you don't take this in the wrong way, but being an African-American, being a Black person in the United States has its own difficulties.
Challenges, absolutely.
That was the first time I felt okay, this is probably what it feels like. Now, again, with this the event at this mass shooting in Maine, so quickly they labeled him as he was mentally ill just because he was a white Caucasian man. I thought about this, and this may not be the case, but this is how it looks like these days. And I'm not really happy with all that.
Well, I can agree with you on that, because I knew that he was Caucasian as soon, without seeing any photos, when it was stated that he was mentally ill. I said he's Caucasian, because people of color aren't given that benefit of the doubt. And it's America, and we're having an open, honest conversation. And these conversations are necessary so that we can move the needle forward, and then we can start getting to some common ground and leveling the playing field. We talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. It really needs to be inclusion first, then the equity, and then the diversity, because you can always throw a brown or a Black face in the room and say, well, we accomplished that, check off the box. But where's the equity and the inclusion? And so even with this situation that happened in Maine, it's so unfortunate. It really is, that this individual was able to, he had an AK-47 or an AR-15, whichever one of those high-powered rifles. had access to it, had been in a mental institution, and still was able to gain access to that type of firearm. And so when you talk about, experiencing hardships in this country, it's unfortunate that after 9/11, you kind of you started getting an understanding of what it is to be a Black person in America. That's our everyday life. But I'll tell you this, I would not want to be anything but a Black woman in who I am. I have been raised to be proud, to love my culture, to love my people, to love all people. And that's the beauty of being a Black person, of being a Black person raised in the church, because our hearts are such that we are forgiving people. And so much has happened to us, yet we still continue to forgive. Because if we were to harbor everything that happened to us, it would be a different dynamic. But I can't allow myself to be that. And that's why I'm running for office, because my heart is such that I love all people. I have a heart for God's people, and that's everybody. Even the individual who kills someone, I still can find it in my heart to love that individual. And it has happened to my family, where Caucasians killed one of my cousins because he is Black. And yet I found it in my heart to be able to forgive. That's not an easy thing when someone has taken a loved one from you, but you can only do that when you have the love of God in your heart. And so what's happening is these individuals, who's dealing with them, who's treating them, and then they get labeled. If you're Caucasian and you shoot up a store, a school, a church, you're mentally ill. But if you're a person of color, you're a demon, you're a monster. They should have been in jail anyway. This is what they do. No, it's not what we do. That's that individual.
And for the better future, I'm still optimistic. So things are going to be better. At least we are able to talk about these openly. And I think most people, I would say this now, maybe better than I could 10 years ago. Most individuals now are more aware of these problems, and their understanding is much better. And I'm still optimistic for the future. And hopefully with the good leaders in this state of Delaware, we are going to be able to helping those transitions and changes, and for better Delaware, hopefully. Now, speaking of better Delaware, our education system. So, and when I had this discussion with other candidates from different positions, one thing that I mentioned earlier, I choose to be in Delaware. That was my personal decision, and could have gone to some other places. I didn't. So, and I stay here. So I'm a Delawarean, and I love this state. So, and I want us to do better in every different field, in every different, area. And when I see us not doing well in education and a couple other things, but let's focus on the education, it's kind of like, it's heartbreaking that we are not able to do better. So what do you think is happening today, and how we can actually change that, and what would be your plan or your team's plan to do this better?
Another outstanding question. I always say education is more political than politics. And I say that because it seems like our educators have to endure so much just to get to the lesson plan. I am the author of House Bill 198, the prime sponsor, and that was the bill to add Black history to the state's curriculum, because Black history is indeed American history. I do believe, and I did not do that in a bubble. I worked with educators up and down the state. I worked with our students from as far south as Selbyville to as far north as Arden and all in between. And we coalition built. We worked with everybody who would have some say in making sure that this particular bill would come to pass. Why do I feel like we have so much that we need to do in education? And what does that look like? We have dedicated educators who really love our children. And they are so tired of the policies, the politics, and they're leaving the classroom in drones. What we need to do is incentivize educators. We need to ensure that educators can come into the building, feel safe, that's important, and be able to educate our children. I am in and out of the schools in my district on a regular basis. I volunteer my time in the schools. We need people who are professionals in the community, who are grooming our children for the next. I'm grooming the next state representative. I'm grooming the next city council person. I'm grooming the next educator, because if they can see it, they can believe it, then they can achieve it. What also has to happen in the school system is we need a holistic approach to education. Not every child is going to be able to learn the same way as the other 10 children in the class. And so we have to figure out, how do we ensure that we are bringing every child along and that they're learning at the pace at which they need to learn, and that they are advanced and ready for college if that's what they desire, or if they desire to go straight into the work field, that we're preparing them. If they desire to go straight into the unions, let's get them skilled and trained and ready. But make sure that we're preparing them for the world. One of the things that we're doing at the Bayard School, which is in my district right now, is we are building a vertical farm. We can't build out because we're landlocked, so we can build up. What that's going to do is make the community healthier, wiser. It's going to bring the community together because people like to fellowship around food. The classrooms will be right by the cafeteria. So what we grow will be able to, it'll be able to go straight into the cafeteria, providing healthy options for our children, thus creating a healthier community. And so we passed bills around mental health and mental health awareness and putting wellness centers in schools. And that's important too, because our children are enduring too much. They're seeing too much in our society. We just had conversation around gun control and gun violence. How does that affect a 10 or 12-year-old or 5 or 6-year-old that they're sitting there watching the news with their grandparents or their parents having their dinner, and they see, or they're watching TV and they see breaking news come across the television about yet another mass shooting? How's that affecting our children? How about the shootings that happen in our own communities up and down the state? So what we need to do is ensure that educators have everything they need to be successful in the classroom, so that we have children who are ready to go out into the world and be outstanding citizens in this great first state.
In terms of, I was on mute, sorry. I was actually agreeing with you on a couple of the things, and I think those kids probably are terrified and is traumatized in so many ways. So that's why it's important for not just for the state, but from the families to be able to support their kids and give them better support in every way. That's extremely important. But these are challenging times for those types of situations. A lot of people don't have their nuclear family structure anymore, so one of the parents are not there in most of the cases, and it brings financial issues with that. So that's why I always believe that public schooling must be very strong, because that's where the state is able to support those families in a better way. Because if they make good money, then they send their kids to private schools, and they feel like that's not their issue anymore. Well, it doesn't work that way, because we are all part of the society, and if we are not advancing together, then it's not going to be so peaceful for the future. So. Well, thank you for your take on that. Now, healthcare is another very expensive and big topic for the election. Being in the private sector as a healthcare provider, we find ourselves in that challenge time to time, as we are being labeled as for-profit organizations, and then there are non-profit organizations who are pretty much doing the same thing that we are doing. 30% of the population we provide services is Medicaid, and the 20% is Medicare. It may be different, higher or lower based on their specialty, but in an average, we provide the same service to the same type of demographics, but we are not nonprofit, so then we are not able to get certain benefits that others are able to. The big hospital systems are able to get, like, we compete with these giant systems with limited resources that we have, but we are doing a great job. For Medicare ACO, the Accountable Care Organization, United Medical is #1 in the state of Delaware for program year 2022. And we are the least expensive ACO, which means cost of our patients is minimum. And we ranked #17 in nationwide. And we are proud of that. And we want to be able to do that for several more years, hopefully. But what do you see in healthcare? One of the biggest issues, perhaps, that we have to kind of address, or do you see big issues that needs to be addressed? So, how would your approach be on the healthcare side?
Equity and access are two of the biggest things as it pertains to healthcare. St. Francis Hospital is in my actual district, and I'm seeing how they're operating. And I'm using them as the example because they're in my district. Mm-hmm. The willingness to treat the poor person as well as the individual who can afford to pay. And that's what needs to happen in our state. We have relatives in England, and their healthcare system is very different from ours. We had a relative who was diagnosed with cancer in England, one of our aunts. And when she was diagnosed, she was given a caregiver. She did not have to go to work. And she still lives with us. She still lives among us. And I say that because she didn't have the stress of having to go to treatment, having to go to work, having to pay her bills, having to take care of the children, all of the dynamics that exist in Delaware or throughout our nation, but we're talking about Delaware right now. How can we figure out our system so that people can live after they've been diagnosed with COVID, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease? What are we doing to ensure that everyone has the same access to great doctors and great treatment? And quite frankly, it doesn't happen. And a lot of times it doesn't happen based on presentation. I've been at the hospital and I didn't tell anyone. I just gave my name. And it was interesting because the leadership of the hospital was like, "Oh my goodness, we didn't know you were here." But why would I get treated differently because I'm an elected official? Why wouldn't the treatment be the same just based on the fact that I'm a citizen of the state of Delaware? And so seeing it for myself, and I can appreciate that, we want to treat people this way because they're helping and they're serving. I get that. But everyone should have access to that same kind of care that was offered to me.
Interesting. Interesting that you would also say that in a way that, you would expect everyone to be treated like, we don't know who's who in many cases. So we are hoping that we are doing the same thing for everyone. But the equity issue is a problem. Now, you mentioned St. Francis, and I do want to take an opportunity here. And every once in a while, I talk about St. Francis, and St. Francis is an extremely important piece especially in Newcastle County. I've been supporting them from the business standpoint personally, just so that they can. We need them to survive, honestly, because if we don't have St. Francis, we are in a huge monopoly in Newcastle County. So, but they have their own issues. They sometimes don't make the best choices. It's kind of like part of a big system, and then they probably don't get enough attention. Hoping that they will be in business, and then we have that alternative for the people in Newcastle County. It's interesting that many people, they have this perception of, oh, if I go to the other hospital, so I'm in a better situation. Well, that's not the case. Same providers, same surgeons, same qualified people are helping. So the only difference is we are going to wait 7-8 hours for a simple appendix surgery in one system versus at St. Francis, they will take you in 30 minutes. So, well, why would you wait for 7-8 hours for the same procedure? For the emergency cases, this is not like an elective case. So St. Francis provides a lot of good options and flexibility for the society, and I hope that they will stay in business.
And they also have the healthy village that they created. And I've been working very closely with them with that. And just this past week, we did a ribbon cutting for the Hope Commission to create reentry for women. The option for women to have the holistic approach to when they come home from a facility, that they can get the same help that the men have been getting through the Hope Commission. And St. Francis is one of the partners for the vertical farming too. So it's really exciting to have them as a community partner, because St. Francis thinks outside of the box as it pertains to the holistic approach of the individual and making the whole community healthy.
I would agree with that. So there are so many other issues, but I think when we were kind of focusing on these main issues, you did address social equity and criminal issues we kind of address. Anything else that you think that is important for people to know that you would be bringing to the table and you would be leading that in Delaware?
Absolutely. I am on the Agriculture Committee, Economic Development, Revenue and Finance. I'm the Vice Chair of Revenue and Finance, and I chair Sunset, and I co-chair Joint Legislative Oversight Sunset. I'm on the Veterans Committee and Judiciary. And on these various committees, they all matter to me. Agriculture is our #1 industry in the state. And many people laugh about it. My papa had this running joke in the family. He said, she's a city girl with country in her heart, because I absolutely love agriculture. Hence the desire in the building of vertical farms, using agriculture to help transform our community. I was just in Sussex Correctional Institution on last week with the Lifers program, at the 30th anniversary for that program. And I was invited because the individual shared with me, you were invited because you care. You show us that you care. Since my days of being on the board of parole and even just being engaged in the community, when someone writes me when they are away, I write them back. And one of the individuals, I was at Judy Johnson Park, which is in my district, and we had a health fair, a community event. And one of the individuals who had just come home from being away, returning citizen, I was talking to someone, and he said, isn't your name Sherry? And I said, yes. And he said, Dorsey Walker? I said, yes. He said, while I was away, you wrote me. I just came home last week. And he'd been away for many years. He said, I'll never forget your kindness. And that is something I desire for people to know about me. Regardless of how you are toward me, I'm still going to be kind to you, because I cannot be who you want me to be. I can only be the best version of me. And my heart is pure. It doesn't mean I'm a perfect person. But what it means is that when it comes to economic development, I look at how we can benefit all people, not just a certain segment of our state. And that has been happening down through the years. People have been able to build generational wealth through procurement opportunities that has escaped people who look like you and I. And that's why I've sponsored legislation to ensure that that doesn't happen as we move forward. Voting rights matter to me. Making sure that people have access to quality education, affordable housing, All of these things matter to me, and I've done something about them by sponsoring legislation and protecting homeowners and protecting renters. I desire for Delaware to be the absolute best state in the nation. And how can that happen? As you mentioned a little earlier, through good leadership, not just good leadership, great leadership. And it's not a matter of being egotistical. It's a matter of looking at a situation, sitting down, having conversations with people with whom you may not agree, but have a willingness to have the conversation so that we can move Delaware forward. Too often, there have been individuals who've been in office, won't talk to the other people about a situation because you don't like the person. We have to get over, as I call it, the silly season of politics and become adults and really look at situations and see how we can make a difference. We talked about gun control. Again, I mentioned voting rights, affordable housing, economic empowerment opportunities, economic development, banking, insurance, agriculture. How do we do this? We do it together. And at the end of the day, we rise to unify. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, this is a really good moving discussion. We are trying to bring all the candidates and see how we can actually be the voice for them, also represent our own network. And the goal is for this year, next week, we have Sarah McBride. She's going to be with us. And in December, we have Bethany Longhold and Lisa Rochester. They're going to join us in December. So we'll kind of finish the 2023 cycle. And next year, we want you guys to be back before the primaries again and continue the discussion. And hopefully, I'm sure you'll do great out there.
Thank you.
So you are probably already doing that, but I know that you will be, you'll do excellent. You'll be a great lieutenant governor, and more for your future. I can see that. We wish you best luck.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. All right, so we had a great conversation with Sherry Dorsey Walker, and I believe she did a good job with answering the questions, and I'm sure we'll see her again for our next debate in 2024. So that's what we have for today, and we thank everyone joining us and listening, and we'll be back in next week, the November 3rd, we'll be back with Sarah McBride. And after that, we'll have a couple of weeks break and then back with the other two candidates that we have. So we'll be finishing the 2023 discussions in the political series. Again, we appreciate everyone following us and joining us. Thank you. Have a great week.